If you want to do better, perform better, know that when you get excited, you're going the wrong way. So that is an area in our lives that we can do better by just turning our focus from the outside world. When people are working hard and pushing towards a goal and everybody's pushing in the same direction, that goal can get achieved pretty quickly. Being emotionally intelligent as a leader, I guess is a better way of saying it, is the key to success. When you take that opportunity to grow from mistakes by taking ownership, everything changes.
All right, Mike. So you scaled a company from 2.5 million to 100 million while being, in your words, a hot-headed mess. What were you doing to the people around you during that climb that you didn't see until later?
Um, just thinking I was smarter than I was. And then when you're growing that fast, there's just problems left and right, and my ability to react to them in a positive way was not very good. I don't think I was completely terrible because we just still had a lot of growth um, and I worked really hard. I think that was a part of what helped bridge some of that gap. But I made it harder than it needed to be, for sure.
Okay. So, at the top of this conversation, even prior to us recording, you mentioned that most men just don't talk. And a lot of men use success as a way of avoiding dealing with themselves. The grind becomes a drug in a sense. When did you realize that your ambition was actually a hiding place?
So I realized that my ambition was a hiding place, and it took me a while. It was probably well into my journey after I realized I needed to quiet the noise in my head. It took me a while, probably 2 or 3 years, to realize that I was and pushing everything into work to somewhat medicate myself. I still had goals and I still would have had to work hard to achieve those goals, but I think it would have been a little bit easier if I had full capacity of my thinking mind and if I had an ability to rally the troops to work with me instead of, you know, swimming upstream, so to speak, with employees and getting everybody to buy in. Yeah, so when people are, working hard and pushing towards a goal and everybody's pushing in the same direction, that goal can get achieved pretty quickly. But when, as a leader, if I'm over here saying this is what we all got to do and demanding that it gets done, and then when it doesn't, get frustrated, um, you know, some people may be tough enough to push through some of that, but some people are going to tell you to fly a kite. They're going to show up and they're going to be clock watching all day long. They're just trying to get home, get to the next day, looking for another opportunity. And there's no real buy-in, and you're kind of on an island, so to speak. You're cracking the whip on people to get them to do a task, and instead of collaborating with them, making them a part of decisions, making them a part of the goal. And now all of a sudden they're buying in. And instead of there being, one leader in the building, now you got 15 or 20 leaders in the building that are all pushing in the same direction. And when that happens, amazing things are possible. A company can scale and grow at a rate that's crazy. And you're being covered on all fronts. But when it's just you pushing and it's, there's, say you have 15 leaders in your company, 20 leaders in your company, and you got 5 people pushing, you're dragging, that means you're dragging 15 people along. And that's not conducive for building a company. But when you could get people to buy in and you can make people feel like they're a part of the team, part of the decisions, because they are, not because you're playing a game with them, because you truly care about them. You pay them in a way that incentivizes them. And, when there's a problem, you don't just go throwing stones. Um, and that's when people are going to find out whether or not they could trust you and whether or not they're going to follow you, is when the shit hits the fan. Are you going to start pointing fingers at everybody else, or are you going to take ownership yourself? And then when they see you take ownership, then that actually builds real trust. Then all of a sudden you got somebody who actually feel safe, secure in their job, they feel like they can speak up, then they can take ownership as well. And they can make a mistake and they're not worried about their job. They're just trying to get to the next solution as well. So being emotionally intelligent as a leader, I guess is a better way of saying it, is the key to success.
So men don't talk about the way they feel a lot. And a lot of us are one bad month away from completely falling apart. Like 68% of all suicides are men. Like we're really good at, but what does that mask actually cost a man over time?
It cost him peace, it cost him relationships, it costs them, potentially promotions at work. It really jumps into every aspect of life because when you're so tied up mentally on performance, like men are based, they're judged and given love based off of what they're giving, right? No woman wants to date a man who doesn't have a job, doesn't have a car, can't take care of himself. And those are all reasonable expectations, but that is how we are judged. That is how we are measured. And so if you have any self-doubt, like I did for years, about your own intelligence, about your own self-worth, and that noise starts to go off in your head, well, that is going to inflame all of your negative stuff that's going on. And now you're going to be terrified about whether or not you can pay the bills, whether or not you're good enough for the woman that you have, or whether you could, you're somebody's going to steal her from you, or if you can do your job well enough, to get to the next promotion. Is anybody going to see that you're not good enough? They're going to see through your failures. Um, and so all of that noise just compounds and compounds and compounds. And in the male world, you're considered weak if you even speak any of those things. You would never dare speak as a man. You don't dare speak. Oh man, I'm worried that I'm not good enough for this job. You would never say that. Like you know that, and then so you're holding all this stuff inside, and it just builds and builds and builds. Emotion is energy in motion. That stuff's supposed to flow, and that's what women do a really good job of doing. Is they constantly processing emotions when they're feeling it. Everybody kind of knows it, and it's because they're good at processing those feelings that they're feeling, and it just builds up in men, and then they snap. They let it out. We were talking about basketball before we got on here, but that's where I used to let it out. I would let it build up all week, and Wednesday nights I'd go play in an adult league all the way into my 50s, and I'd take it out on the poor sucker that that was across from me on the basketball court, and you know, and that was completely unhealthy. It wasn't a good thing that I was doing, but it was the only outlet that I had. So yeah, we as men we need to learn how to open up and speak the truth and find safe environments where you can talk about how we're feeling and allow some of this emotion to actually move. And it doesn't mean we're soft. It doesn't mean we're weak. It doesn't mean we're less than. It just means that this shit is hard, and it helps when you're able to just acknowledge it.
Everything in the world is reinforcing that a man's value in the world is his performance, right?
Yes.
Like I'll speak very candidly. Even me, I think I'm not even think statistics prove it, doing better than most men financially, and yet performance is still there. You get a bill in the mail randomly, and it's for $16,000, a medical bill that you never saw coming. It's like, whoa. And that's even an expectation. If you don't fulfill that, then you're letting everything else down. And it feels like life is constantly giving us something and saying, will you show up for it? Will you do this? And even in marriage, it's like you can do really well, and then you think you're doing well, and then next thing you know, it seems like, oh, performance isn't going as well as I thought. And how do you get someone to, a man specifically, to like untether himself to that identity of performance when the whole world is constantly reinforcing that?
You just start making it a practice of whatever the problem is, it becomes your fault, right? And then if you're in an argument with your wife and you know that at some level you're both wrong, well, there's multiple ways to approach this. And I made a mistake in trying to argue for a lot of years and saying, oh, I'm right. Yeah, okay, I messed this up, but you messed up too, and whatever. And ultimately, that's just an argument and you don't get anywhere. What I learned, and I think this works in business, but more so, I think it helps for our personal lives, all of our personal relationships, and how we deal with ourselves, not even the outside world or any of our relationships, is just taking ownership. So in that same conversation with your wife, 90% or 10% of your fault or her fault, it doesn't matter. When you take 100% responsibility for whatever it is that you did in that situation, you have 100% chance of learning and growing and becoming better. And when you start to do that, everything that happens to you that is negative becomes a learning experience and you grow from it. And when you grow as an individual, everything around you is going to change and move off of that. Jim Rohn used to say, if you want to improve your job and your life, work twice as hard on you as you do your job. And when we do that, that has never been a truer statement. When you work on yourself by taking ownership of it and finding a way in that relationship with you and your wife and take whatever percentage of that argument was your fault and improve from it. Stop pointing at her and just say, all right, I'm gonna start taking the trash out without having to be asked. I see it full, I didn't do it, I'm just gonna take the trash out and do my thing. That's your responsibility. Now all of a sudden you're being more aware in the house, you're being more present, you're paying attention to whatever that problem is, and you're becoming a better human being because of it. And I think that's how we move forward. And when you start to make those changes, you have a perspective change and life starts to shift because you start to view the world as different and you as an evolving human. And because when we go into a situation and we act like we know everything, you're set up for failure right out the gate. But when you go into a situation knowing that every opportunity every failure is an opportunity for another lesson, now all of a sudden you're looking for another failure. You're looking for it doesn't feel like a punch in the stomach when you fail. It's like, okay, good. I get to get better again. I've been doing this for the last 3 years and I'm way better than I was 3 years ago. It starts to build confidence and confidence that when I take ownership, I get better. And if you do this for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, you won't even be the same person that you were. But if we just constantly say it's everybody else's fault, we point to everyone else outside circumstances, we stay the exact same person we are today for the rest of our lives. And that's what's going to keep you stuck. When you take that opportunity to grow from mistakes by taking ownership, everything changes.
So you have worked with men at maximum security prisons who have done some terrible things. And what did they teach you about what happens when a man has no tools to process pain?
Then the sense of helplessness, just hopelessness, like, oh my gosh, what do I do? They got people coming in there trying to help them from various Christian groups and a wide range of religious groups, and they have access to a certain level of help, and most of it's not helping them. So the hopelessness that people have in prison is very similar, in my opinion, to what is happening out in the real world, out in the free world, I would say, because it's all mental. Every bit of it's all mental. These guys are, as a species, we're all struggling, and it's there are billionaires out there free that are more miserable than people who are learning how to master their mind in prison. It's how we process the world is going to determine the quality of our life.
You've spent $50,000 in 3 years rewiring your own mind, and I'm curious what belief about yourself was so deeply buried that it took that long and that much money to dig out?
It cost me $50,000 to rewrite my old negative core beliefs about my intelligence, and then self worth, and then being lovable. And it was like a never ending hole that it just kept getting deeper and deeper. But that's the part that creates the voices in our head. The negative voices in our head are coming from somewhere, and they're coming from a negative program that was programmed when we were kids. Could have been programmed last week, but most of it is coming from a negative core belief when we were a small child. And it's liberating when you start to figure it out. But to answer your question a little more detailed is, I couldn't read till I was 25 years old. And that specific issue created negative core beliefs that my brain was singing the tune that you're not smart enough, you can't figure this out, they're going to figure out that you're dumb, like all day every day. And with every accomplishment, it got louder and louder after a little bit of, all right, good job, you did this. Oh, but you're still dumb, they're going to figure it out. You can't do the next thing. You do the next thing, and then it gets louder and louder. By the time I was in my late 40s, it was so loud, it was unbearable. It was like somebody was screaming with a loudspeaker.
Can you tell me about the experience of self-worth? Because you mentioned that was another limiting belief. Can you just tell me what that, just the story of how that programming came about?
Yeah. So I think I developed a negative self-worth from the same topic, just not being able to read. I think it starts with, okay, you're not smart enough, and then okay, now I'm not worthy of being in the same class. Some of my friends were in this English class, and I was still stuck in the basics, never getting out of anything higher than the lowest level that would push me through and allow me to graduate. And so it was a constant reinforcement of self-worth. There was issues at the house, being raised by a single mom that was overwhelmed, had 3 kids, living on off of government assistance. There was a lot of things that reinforced a negative self-worth. Um, but at the end of the day, it was all a lie. None of it was true. And that's why I ended up creating the program that I did, is because once you start to understand the way that the mind works, none of the stuff that we're dealing with is true. It's the way you felt in one moment in time. And because the subconscious mind doesn't have any concept of time, it's still happening right now. The only thing that ever exists, this moment, and it's trying to protect you in this moment from that same thing that happened 50 years ago or 10 years ago. And it's literally just trying to protect you. And in doing so, it's regurgitating those old negative feelings that you had in that moment. And so when we understand it, it kind of takes some of the negativity and the sorry, I'm getting it.
Oh, you're fine. You're okay. Go ahead. You can go answer. It's fine. Oh, okay. It's okay. How do you just talk a man through who thinks this stuff is just a gimmick or bullshit? Like, what would you say to them?
I would say, you say all you want until you try it. I would say try it first before you said anything. But I learned a long time ago, you can't talk anybody into anything. They have to be at a place in life where they're ready to learn, or you're just banging your head against the wall. So I don't do much of that, trying to talk somebody into it. But what I would say is, you're starting to see it all over the world now. Like I just watched an interview with a speed skater, or I think she's in the Olympics, just won a gold medal.
Alyssa Liu?
Yeah, I think she's 22 years old, but she told an amazing story about how she works with her mind. And she's done it ever since she was like 8 years old. And she had trained her mind. She talks about how, we are in control of our thoughts. And John Jones, one of the most famous UFC fighters on the planet, he meditates and imagines beating his his opponent long before he ever gets in the ring with him, and he's become one of the baddest men on the planet. And he attributes his success to the work that he's done on his mind. And so, what I would say to any man that listens to this that is might think some of this stuff is for the birds is start paying attention to some of the success that people are having by focusing on their breath, because it's in athletes everywhere are starting to use this. The highest level of athletes are all starting to meditate. They're all starting to bring breath work into their routines because it calms their system down, it turns the mind off, and it puts them into a flow state. Golfers are using it. Um, it works. It doesn't mean you have to, be soft. The Navy SEALs, the baddest guys on the planet, are using uh, breathing techniques to calm their system down in the middle of a firefight. And the reason that happens is because when we all get excited, we become dumb. We go into fight or flight, and our brain stops working the way it normally does. They call it the default mode network. When you're in a panic, you just start to try to survive, and you lose the ability to rationally think yourself through a problem. So no matter how intelligent you are, when you get excited, you become 40 to 60% dumber. Your IQ goes down by 40 to 60%. That's a massive amount of brain power that's going down just because you just got excited. And so for every man out there that's listening to this, if you want to be better, if you want to do better, perform better in any way, shape, or form, know that when you get excited, you're going the wrong way. So that is an area in our lives that we can do better by just turning our focus from the outside world, going inward. It turns the mind off. The breath work will calm the system down, and it give you full capacity of your thinking mind, and allow you to navigate situations that just helps improve all facets of our lives.
A lot of men feel like if they admit they're struggling, they'll lose respect, right, from their wife, from their children, their employees, or their coworkers. Is that fear real, or is that just a story that we tell ourselves?
It feels real, but I definitely think it would suck if you admit it and you speak it, and then there's no help. I think just processing emotions and talking about it, that's traditional therapy, right? That's what it does. And you do feel better when you allow that information to process and you can just speak about a problem.
Hmm.
But it does feel helpless when you have a real problem going on inside and you talk about it and then nothing gets done. There's no action items. It doesn't get fixed. And so for a lot of men, I think they might speak up from time to time, and then they just talked about it and nothing got solved, and they still feel the same miserable way that they do inside, and that's unfortunate. Um, because I don't think there's a lot of clear guidance out there in the world to help men navigate some of this stuff. So the fear is real, but I still challenge everybody to just push forward, try to turn your focus inward, take ownership, do some of these things to help start the process. Your awareness of it is the first step. Realizing that there's a problem, being willing to speak about it, say, I don't want to live like this. That is a first major step. And nothing healing can happen until that happens.
So a lot of men deal with fear slash anxiety. We'll call it anxiety. And I know you've said that anxiety off in men often shows up as controlling situations, controlling people, needing everything to go a certain way. What's the connection there?
Well, men's need to control everything to me, it goes back to our original need to be measured based off of the content of what we're doing. It's all performance based. And so if you're not able to perform, you're not going to be measured in a certain way. You're not going to be looked at in a certain way. So, our ability to just take some of the bullshit and put it to the side about how we're being measured, I think that's a big deal. and to become aware of the fact that, yes, if I don't do this, I'm going to be looked at as worthless. If I don't make enough money, if I don't get the right car, if I don't pay my child support, if I don't put enough food on the table, if I don't do these things, then I'm not worthy of being considered a man. Um, I think when you take and you strip yourself from some of these identities that we have, um, it kind of you can remove some of those involuntary responses that come through there, and that's a whole nother part of a conversation about identities that we attach to ourselves, because those identities now get uh, treated as if your body's going to defend your identities as if it's defending your life. So your job title, if you're a good, for me, I'm a COO of a company. If somebody tells me I'm a shitty COO and I identify with being a good COO, I'm going to immediately put my dukes up and be ready to go at you. You know, I'm going to defend myself. But I don't identify as being a COO. So you can call me a shitty COO all day long and it doesn't touch me because I'm so much more than that. And and all I have to do is say those simple words and it removes that from my identity. As long as I speak the right way about myself, I don't have those attachments and it's freeing. So for men out there who are struggling with a lot of involuntary responses, if you start paying attention to them, you're going to realize that some of them are in a direct response to an identity, being a good husband, being a good dad, being a good friend, a brother, son, your job title, even a Tennessee Titans fan or a college football fan or whatever it is. Like these are all identities. And when you when they get attacked, you have an involuntary response. And they're very easy to put on and they're very easy to take off.
The part I'm interested in is what you had mentioned about identities and how you ground yourself in how you really are, and you say a couple sentences to remind yourself. What are those things that you remind yourself, if you don't mind me asking?
So the things I do to remind myself is because there's so many things that we can identify with. So it's a constant reminder of whatever situation I'm in. I'm like, all right, 10 years ago, I would have identified as a husband. I would identify as a dad. I would identify as a senior project manager. And as I go into a situation, I try to make sure that I'm not identifying with anything because it potentially can throw me out of whack. You know, I don't want my body to physically start defending something and then my brain goes into the default network, I get dumb and I lose the whole situation. So it's a constant reminder and an awareness. And everything comes back. If you want to start growing and you want to start doing anything, you have to become aware of who you are and how your body works. So if I'm Evan and you're a marketing guy, you're getting coached by brilliant people and you got a whole lot working on the inside, you're constantly working on yourself. But if I say something like you're a shitty husband, that's gonna hurt. All right. It probably makes your stomach feel a little funky because you identify as being a good husband. You know that that's not true. But at the end of the day, your body doesn't know the difference. And so you have a physical response in the middle of your gut when I say that, even though you know I'm your friend.
I did.
Yeah, because your body's going to physically react regardless of whether you know that, because I'm a kind person, you know that I don't mean that, but your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference about that. But if I say the same thing to you, I'm like, Evan, you're the shittiest attorney ever. Nothing there because you have no attachment to it. But it's so easy to remove that attachment of being a good husband. And guess what? When the next time you and your wife get into it about something, because every couple, you're going to fuss and argue at whatever level you guys do. If you were to take off being a good husband, you wouldn't feel any reason to defend your side because your body's not going to physically do that. You'll just be able to consciously say, all right, baby, help me understand what you're saying here, because there wouldn't be a, well, don't you know, or there wouldn't be no physical reaction. It would just be a, sweetheart, help me understand what you're saying a little bit better, so I could make some changes or help you feel better about this situation? Like, what can I do to make this better? And all of a sudden you're able to work through a relationship issue with your spouse and get to a better place without all the physical reaction that makes it worse. And that's how, honestly, it's a major part of why men in particular react the way we do, because we are so stringently attached to a lot of these attachments. Being a husband, being a good husband, that's a big one. Being a good dad, that's a huge one.
It's a huge one.
You attack either one of those, and they'll fight. Will fight you in the streets.
Go to war.
Right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what some random words say. If somebody can control us with their words, they're they're our master. Let's get rid of that ability for them to control us, and we just respond. We don't react, and life gets a lot easier after that.
The question comes to my mind. So if Mike is not it does not identify as a great father, a great husband, a great COO, who are you?
I'm so much more than all of those things, and so are you, and so is everybody else. The essence of God is in all of us, and so I'm gonna say that, you know, I don't know exactly what I am, but I know I'm so much more than anything I can identify with. And when I live from that place, life just flows in a beautiful way.
What's the thing men are most ashamed to admit about their inner life? Like the thought or feeling they'd never say out loud to anyone?
You know, I'd say everybody's a little different, but it's all the negative stuff that their voices are telling them. I would never admit that I was stupid, but that's what was being said to me every day. So if you have negative beliefs about your intelligence, well, that's probably the worst one that you're never going to admit. But it's just a negative core belief that created a program that it's trying to protect you. It's not real. So what I would say to that question is, don't believe any of it. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's not real. And so when you can get that separation between you and your thoughts, because when you've got a thought going on in your head, but you're the one, the true you, the one that is not identified with anything, the one that is the one witnessing that thought, that negative thought in your head that says you're not smart enough. You're the one witnessing that thought. You're not producing it. That thought is not you. Don't identify with that thought. That thought is just like a cloud going across the sky. You're not that cloud. You're the sky, right? You're so much more than just that thought that's in your head. And when we attach to it, and that's the big problem, that people identify with their thoughts. They think their thoughts are coming from them, so they must be true. Those are both false statements. They're just an old program from a bad moment that happened a long time ago, and it's telling a lie. It's regurgitating something that was created by a 5-year-old little boy. You wouldn't listen to a 5-year-old kid walk up to you right now and tell you you're stupid. Like, you'd be like, you little dumb shit, go away. Like, you would laugh it off. But when it's coming from inside, we believe it. We identify with it. And that's where so much of our pain as men is coming from.
You know, something that comes to my mind is a lot of guys try to, instead of going about their thoughts and feelings the way you have outlined here so eloquently, they use alcohol to numb the as a numbing strategy, right? Some do alcohol, some do weed, some do with work, some do with porn, some with rage. And just curious of your thoughts on that. And like what's the, because maybe you've had, I mean, obviously it sounds like to me work is an obvious one that comes to mind, but what was your numbing strategy, and what did you realize, when did you realize it stopped working?
Um, to be honest with you, I tried all of it. For my early 20s, I smoked weed all the way through my 20s, started drinking in my early 20s. I was a casual drinker, never really drank at home, but socially, I would have to drink to hang out with anybody because my anxiety would be so high, I couldn't hang out with anybody, have any kind of fun until I numbed it all up. So I had basketball. That was an escape that was moderately healthy. Physically, it was good for me to run off all that and get some stress out. But you know, when words get tangled, I was so ready to fight. That was completely unhealthy and wrong, and I was reacting in a negative way. Um, but I think going back to the lump sum of all of it, it's because I wasn't willing to turn my focus inward and start that learning process. I wasn't able to start taking on the problems and creating lessons to learn and grow. Like if we're having all that on it, the universe is trying to tell us something. One of the most valuable gifts I've learned in this whole process is everything you get a choice. Is this happening for you or is this happening against you? And when you make the choice that everything that happens is happening for you, even if it appears to be negative, okay, what do I get to learn from this? And then you get to grow. So now it's happening for me. And when you approach everything with that, in that framework, all of a sudden the world starts to change. You will not be the same person 2 years from now if you have that approach with every single problem. But if you take every problem that comes at you and be like, I can't believe she did that to me. She does this all the time. I can't, this job I got, they won't give me the promotion that I deserve. They just hold me down, whatever it is. Like, if that's how you respond to problems, you're going to be in the exact same place 2 years from now. But if you change it all around, like, okay, what am I trying to learn from this woman that's clearly upset? Okay, well, I didn't do this or that. All right, so how can I get better? Doesn't absolve her from acting like a fool and doing something wrong too, but what it does do is allows you to get better. It allows you to grow. And then the same thing with job. Like, okay, well, they won't give me. So go to your boss and ask him, like, hey, man, what can I do to get better? I understand I want to grow and whatever. What can I do? And listen to everything they said and don't get frustrated and mad. Own everything. If you don't show up on time, get there 15 minutes early. If you're a hothead, figure out a way to do box breathing during your day and get yourself calm. If you don't know something, take your time, free time and after work and learn. Stay early, or get there early, stay late, and learn whatever it is you need to get to the next place. But take ownership of it so then you can take action and grow and get better. But pointing fingers and not taking ownership is going to leave you in the same spot.
So there's got to be a man who's listening to this right now and knows something is off, but he's not ready to do a program or see anybody. What's one thing that he can do this week that might start to crack the door open there?
The first thing that I would say is to just try to take stock in where he's at, and try to just sit here right now and feel whatever is going on. Not out here, what's going on inside. What are the voices telling him? What are his insecurities? How does he feel in the morning when he wakes up? How is he feeling right now? Um, those negative voices, they're trying to tell you something. And if you listen instead of running away from them, you're going to get answers. And so that would be the biggest thing, because the universe is going to start giving you answers to your questions once you start listening, right? That's how it works. If you're sitting here and you're struggling and you don't have a clue what to do, but then you start to listen to everything and start to truly hear what's going on inside, you're going to get some answers. You may not necessarily know what to do with it, but then you could take that information and you can go, all right, so I constantly feel like I'm a loser, like I'm unlovable or I'm stupid, whatever it is. And then you can go, all right, so, okay, I know this is what I feel like. So what do I do with this? You could log into learntolovebeingyou.com and you could take a program, or you can go to a therapist, sit down and talk to them. You could go grab a book. You can get online and get on YouTube and type in anything that you're talking about. And there's going to be 10 people pop up and try to give you an answer to solve your problems. And every little bit of a solution that you get, then go search for another one. And it's like a trail of breadcrumbs, and you just keep moving forward. But now that you're actually paying attention and you're going inward to find these answers, now you will get answers. It feels hopeless, but it only feels hopeless because you're not moving and you feel stuck. But once you start to take a step and then another step, it starts to loosen up, and you'll make progress.
One concept I think is really, when you were talking about life and how seeing life as happening for you, not against you, is one reminds me of like life is it's almost like God, is God playing some big game that is just here to say gotcha, or is it the game of trying to show you that I've got you? And I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
I 100% believe it's here to show you I got you. This universe, this life will put its arms around you when you open up to and bad things are going to happen, but it's how you respond to them that is going to affect your response to the universe and to how everything gets processed. Because it doesn't matter what's happening out here in front of me. Right now, we can be having a podcast, and I get to choose whether I think Evan is a good podcast or a bad one. It's my perception on how I process this information in my head and how this podcast went and how I did about it. I get to process all that information. And what I would choose to do is take it all as a learning opportunity. So in that way, if I messed up, that's not a bad thing because I get to learn from it. So there can be no bad outcome from that. I can't have a bad podcast with you because even if I messed up, if I'm paying attention, I get to learn from it. Like, you can't have a bad day because you learn from it. And if you learn and grow from something, is that really a bad day? No, it's you just got better today than you were yesterday. And that car's eye challenge that people talk about where you get 1% better every day, if you do that over 10 years, you're like 1.2 trillion% better. So there is no failing. There is no bad if you have the right perspective and you actually take action and move that way.
Well, I think it's been a good podcast. Is there any other question I didn't think to ask that you think would be important for your audience to hear?
No, I guess if I'm just talking to a man out there who's struggling, just know that you're not broken, that this is completely normal for you to be judged off of performance in your own head, but it's wrong, man. You're not broken, and you just don't know how to operate your system. You don't understand how to make your system work for you instead of against you. And turn your focus inward, and don't be afraid to open your mouth and talk about whatever it is, and you'll find the way. You'll find the way out of it.
Thank you, Mike, as always.
Thank you.